She's unstable. Unemployed. Unfit. My ex-husband Derek spoke those words like he was reading a verdict that had already been decided. His voice echoed through the courtroom with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. His new girlfriend Megan sat in the gallery, nodding along, her hand resting on her stomach in a performance of maternal concern. She had started calling my children ours 3 months into their relationship. My children. The ones I had carried, nursed, and raised while Derek worked late, traveled for business, and built the career he now used as a weapon against me. The judge looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Castellano, do you have anything to say in response?" I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "Just one thing, Your Honor. He asked me to record this for him. He forgot." Derek's face changed. The courtroom went silent. And for the first time in 2 years, I watched my ex-husband realize he had destroyed himself with his own words. My name is Vivian Castellano. I was 34 years old when my marriage ended, but the collapse had started long before the paperwork. Derek and I met in college. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I was studying early childhood education. He was in finance. We were opposites in every way that seemed romantic at 22. After graduation, I got a job teaching kindergarten. Derek climbed the ladder at an investment firm. When I got pregnant with our first child, Lily, Derek suggested I stay home. "You'll make more of a difference raising our kids than teaching other people's," he said. It sounded supportive then. I didn't realize he was already building the case that would haunt me years later. I became a stay-at-home mother. I raised Lily, then our son Marcus, while Derek became a senior portfolio manager. I handled every doctor's appointment, every school pickup, every nightmare at 3 a.m. I managed the household budget, coordinated repairs, planned every birthday party. Derek's contribution was his paycheck and occasional weekend appearances when he wasn't golfing with clients. But in his mind, and apparently in the eyes of the law, I was just a stay-at-home mom. Unemployed. Dependent. Disposable. The affair started 2 years before the divorce. I found out the way most wives do, a text notification on his iPad while he was in the shower. Megan Porter, 28, junior analyst at his firm. The messages were explicit, cruel, full of jokes about how boring I was, how trapped he felt, how Megan made him feel alive again. I didn't confront him that night. I did what I had learned to do after years of being dismissed. I observed. I documented. I waited. For 8 months, I quietly gathered evidence. Screenshots of messages. Credit card statements showing hotel rooms and jewelry purchases. A calendar of every night he claimed to be working late. I stored everything in a cloud folder he didn't know existed, backed up to an email address he'd never seen. When Derek finally announced he wanted a divorce, he did it over dinner like he was closing a business deal. "This isn't working, Viv. I think we both know that. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be fair, but I need you to understand, the kids are staying with me. They need stability, and you don't have the means to provide that." He slid a document across the table. A proposed custody agreement giving him primary custody, with me getting alternating weekends. The reasoning listed was clinical: mother has no income, no recent employment history, no independent residence. "You can fight this," Derek said, "but you'll lose. And it'll cost you whatever I give you in the settlement." I looked at the document. I looked at my children's names typed in legal font, their lives reduced to visitation schedules and holiday rotations. I looked at the man I had built a life with, who was now trying to erase me from that life entirely. "I'll think about it," I said. I didn't think about it. I planned. The next morning, I called my cousin Rosario, an attorney who specialized in family law. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "He's going to try to bury you," she said. "He has money, connections, and a narrative that plays well in family court. Stay-at-home mom with no job versus successful financial executive. Judges see that story every day, and they don't always side with the mother anymore." "I know," I said. "But you have something," she continued. "You have documentation. And in my experience, men like Derek always underestimate women like you. He thinks you're going to cry, sign whatever he puts in front of you, and disappear. That's his weakness." Rosario took my case. She filed responses that slowed Derek's aggressive timeline. She requested financial discovery that forced him to reveal exactly how much he spent on Megan during our marriage. She subpoenaed his travel records, his expense reports, his personal credit card statements. Derek was furious. He started calling me constantly, sometimes threatening, sometimes pleading. One night, about 3 weeks before the custody hearing, he showed up at the apartment I was renting. He was drunk, angry, and loud enough that my neighbor came out to check on me. "You're destroying everything," Derek shouted through the door. "I built that life. I paid for that house. I paid for those kids' schools, their clothes, their food. What did you contribute? Nothing. You sat at home and spent my money. I didn't respond. I was too busy making sure my phone was recording. No judge is going to give custody to a woman who can't even keep a job, he continued, his voice slurring. You're pathetic, Vivian. You always were. Megan understands what a real partnership looks like. She's going to be a better mother to our kids than you ever were. The recording captured everything. His contempt. His admission that he saw the children as possessions. His statement that Megan, a woman who had never met my children, would replace me as their mother. The next morning, I sent the recording to Rosario. She called me back within an hour. This changes everything, she said. He just handed us his own destruction. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. Derek arrived with his expensive attorney, his tailored suit, and his polished narrative. Megan sat in the gallery wearing a conservative dress that made her look like a future stepmother from a catalog. Derek's lawyer painted me as emotionally unstable, financially dependent, and incapable of providing structure for 2 growing children. He presented bank statements showing I had no income. He presented Derek's performance reviews showing he was a stable, successful professional. He presented character witnesses from Derek's firm who testified that he was a dedicated family man. Then he called Derek to the stand. Derek spoke with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed every answer. He talked about his commitment to the children, his plans for their education, his ability to provide a stable home. He mentioned, almost casually, that Megan was expecting their first child together, and that the children would benefit from a complete family structure. Mrs. Castellano has struggled since the separation, Derek's lawyer said in his closing. She has no employment, no clear plan, and a history of emotional volatility. The children deserve stability. Mr. Castellano can provide that. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Castellano, do you have anything to say in response? I stood slowly. Rosario nodded beside me. Your Honor, I was a stay-at-home mother for 9 years. During that time, I raised 2 children while my husband built his career. I managed every aspect of their daily lives. I was present for every milestone, every illness, every school event. My husband attended perhaps a dozen of those events in 9 years. I have the calendars to prove it. Rosario handed a folder to the judge. I also have documentation of my husband's affair, which began while I was still caring for his children and managing his household. I have receipts for jewelry, hotel rooms, and trips that were paid for with marital assets. Assets I helped build by sacrificing my own career to support his. Derek shifted in his seat. Megan's smile faded. But there's one more thing, Your Honor. I pulled out my phone. 3 weeks ago, my husband came to my apartment and spoke to me through the door. He asked me to record the conversation so I would have proof of what he was offering. He forgot he asked. I didn't. Derek's face went white. Rosario stood. Your Honor, we'd like to submit this recording as evidence. It captures Mr. Castellano stating that his girlfriend will be, and I quote, a better mother to our kids than Mrs. Castellano. It also captures him calling Mrs. Castellano pathetic and stating that she contributed nothing to the family, despite 9 years of full-time caregiving. Derek's lawyer objected. The judge overruled him. The recording played. Derek's voice filled the courtroom, slurred and venomous. Every word he had spoken in anger was now evidence of his true character. The contempt. The dismissal. The casual cruelty of a man who believed his money made him untouchable. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. Megan had left the gallery. Derek sat with his head in his hands. The judge removed her glasses and looked directly at Derek. Mr. Castellano, in my 22 years on this bench, I have rarely seen a more complete misrepresentation of character. You presented yourself as a dedicated father while simultaneously planning to remove your children's mother from their lives. You dismissed 9 years of caregiving as nothing. You spoke of replacing their mother with a woman they have never met. Derek tried to speak. The judge raised her hand. Primary custody is awarded to Mrs. Castellano. Mr. Castellano will have supervised visitation until a parenting coordinator determines he can be trusted with unsupervised contact. Additionally, given the documented dissipation of marital assets during the affair, Mr. Castellano will pay spousal support at the maximum guidelines, plus child support, plus Mrs. Castellano's legal fees. Derek's lawyer tried to object. The judge cut him off. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the State Bar for review. The financial irregularities documented here may warrant investigation by Mr. Castellano's employer and regulatory authorities. I didn't look at Derek as I gathered my things. I didn't need to see his face to know what was there. I had spent 9 years learning to read his expressions, and I already knew what defeat looked like on him. Outside the courthouse, Rosario hugged me. You did it, she said. You actually did it. I looked up at the gray October sky and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Space. Room to breathe. A future that belonged to me and my children, not to a man who had tried to erase us both. The aftermath was swift. Derek's firm opened an internal investigation after the judge's referral. Within 2 months, he was placed on administrative leave pending review of his expense reports. Megan, it turned out, had been promoted twice during their relationship, promotions that were now being scrutinized for impropriety. By Christmas, Derek had lost his job. Megan had transferred to a different firm in another state. The baby she was carrying, the one that was supposed to be part of their complete family structure, was now going to be raised by a single mother. I felt no satisfaction in that. A child was innocent. But I felt a certain grim justice in watching Derek's carefully constructed life collapse under the weight of his own choices. My children adjusted better than I expected. Lily, who was 9, told me one evening that she was glad we didn't have to whisper anymore. I asked her what she meant. When Daddy was home, you always whispered. Like you were scared of making noise. Now you talk normal. Marcus, who was 6, asked if Daddy was ever coming back. I told him Daddy would always be his father, and he would see him when it was safe. Marcus nodded and went back to his coloring. Children understand more than we give them credit for. I started working again 6 months after the hearing. A friend from my teaching days connected me with a private school that needed a kindergarten teacher. The hours aligned with my children's schedules. The pay wasn't what Derek made, but it was mine. Every dollar I earned was proof that I had never been the helpless dependent he had tried to make me. Derek completed his supervised visitation requirements after 8 months. The parenting coordinator reported that he had shown genuine improvement, that he spoke about the children with more respect, that he had started therapy. I didn't know if it was real change or performance. I didn't need to know. What mattered was that my children were protected, and the court had the authority to step in if that changed. 1 year after the hearing, I bought a small house with a garden. It had a room for Lily, a room for Marcus, and a kitchen with a window that looked out over a maple tree that turned red every October. It wasn't the house I had imagined when I was 22 and in love with a charming finance major. It was better. It was mine. The recording that changed everything sits in a folder on my computer now. I haven't listened to it since the hearing. I don't need to. I remember every word Derek said that night, every slur, every insult, every casual dismissal of everything I had given to our family. But I also remember what came after. The silence in the courtroom when the recording ended. The judge's voice, calm and final. The walk outside into the cool October air. Derek had asked me to record that conversation. He wanted proof of his own generosity, evidence that he had offered me a fair deal. He forgot that recordings capture everything, not just the parts we want remembered. He called me pathetic. He called me unemployed. He called me unfit. He said no judge would give children to a woman who couldn't keep a job. He was wrong. Quiet women don't lose in court. Quiet women listen. Quiet women document. Quiet women wait for the right moment to let the truth speak for itself. And when that moment comes, the truth is louder than any lie a confident man can tell. This is what justice looks like. Not revenge. Not destruction. Just patience, preparation, and the courage to stand in a courtroom and let someone's own words become their undoing. If you re-watching this and you in a situation where someone is trying to take everything from you, remember one thing. They are counting on your silence. They are counting on your fear. They are counting on you to give up before the fight even starts. Don't. Document everything. Trust the right people. And when the time comes, let the truth do the work. Because sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a loud voice or an expensive lawyer. Sometimes it's a recording that someone forgot they asked you to make.